Ksenia, thank you so much for joining us here at the Wilson Center at the Kennan Institute. You've had quite a busy visit to Washington already. You've had a busy political season in Moscow, and you go back, of course, for the critical last weeks before the election. Tell me, if you could, what is it that you expect to bring back from Washington to Moscow, and why is that important to the people you hope will vote for you?
First of all, I hope to bring new contacts, new ideas on how our relations can be fixed up, and ideas on what kind of compromise we are ready for each other, America and Russia. So this is clue points that I'm hoping to bring from here.
Mm-hmm. Of course, seen from the American perspective, the question of compromise on a question like Russia's invasion and occupation of Ukraine is not even part of the discussion. Russia must recognize its violation, it must undo what it has done, and then sanctions can be lifted, relations can be normalized. How do you respond to that position from the United States?
Well, I write it quite clearly in my program that I think that any help to Donbass should be stopped immediately. All the troops that are called so-called volunteers should be also left immediately from Donbass. Russia should take no interrogation into Ukraine's territory, and the question of the Crimea should be redecided. So this should be again a compromise found on those territories, or some kind of compensation to Ukraine, or a referendum. So there is some way of compromise around Crimea to be found.
Do you think that such a compromise would be possible with Vladimir Putin still as president of Russia after March?
Well, that depends on the situation, and that depends if he needs this compromise, because I'm quite sure that for him Donbass is also a point which he keeps burning only in order to exchange it if he needs for something else. So for him it's also a kind of a card in a game which he keeps until the very critical moment. So I think, as we see, Russia has stated it quite clearly that they won't accept Donbass independence, and they won't help in this way. So this is already a sign for me that they are ready to exchange it for something really important.
So your candidacy so far, and your visibility in the media, your very clear, both in English and in Russian, expression of your views, has all, I think, earned you a lot of attention. If you have the attention of President Putin again, we know you've had it before, how would you explain to him the need for that compromise? How would you explain what his interest would be in such a compromise?
His interest in repairing the relations between Western world and Russia. And this repair is needed for all the elite of Russia, for them to support Putin for a long time, and for Russia to develop, because economy now cannot develop in a situation of isolation. It's not possible. We live in an open world, the world with transitions all around. So now our economy becomes more and more isolated, and this is just gonna kill our country. And I'm sure Putin knows the consequences, and he would be eager to move forward to a compromise which will not put him to the position of the West dictating him what to do.
Mm-hmm. About Mr. Navalny, you've had kind of an interesting public conversation with Alexei Navalny. You recognize, obviously, the impact that protests, which he has called for, have had in Russian politics, but at the same time, you are occupying a different position. Why do you think that you are able to run for president while Mr. Navalny clearly will be denied the ability to run by the authorities?
Well, because his case was prepared for years. This Kirov Les case, which was as a pretext for not letting him to elections, because I think it's very important for American audience to understand it was not like Putin said, no, we won't let Alexei Navalny take part. So in fact, it was like this, but de jure, what they did is they formed this Kirov less, so to say, I don't know, dela,
The case.
and said, by Russian law, when you have a sentence, you cannot take part in the elections. So this was done long before. With me, it's really, you cannot invent a case for 3 months. And that was why I popped out of the box immediately to make this, a surprise for everyone. Of course, you can put drugs in your pockets and say, but this will be so evident to all of the world, so they cannot afford it. So I think I can have lots of troubles, but they will all happen after 18th of March, not now.
Right.
Because now, when you do it in 3 months' time before elections, you're kind of, it's impossible for them to invent something in such a short time. They will look really hilarious.
So you have talked about how after March, of course you, like many of us, expect that Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin will still be president of Russia, but you've talked about the importance of the platform that you will have created, the movement, the electorate, we would say. If you're going to have problems, is your slogan of evolution and not revolution, so voting instead of protesting in the streets, compromise instead of throwing people into prison, is this format still going to hold once you are attacked in the way that Mr. Navalny has been attacked?
Well, I can't answer this question right now because, you don't know how far can you go physically and emotionally. I hope to stand there up as I stood when I had raids in my home, when I lost my work. But of course, there is a certain point at which I could say, no, I won't go any further. I have a child, and I'm ready to step behind at a certain point. I don't know where this point lies, but I know that I will do my maximum, and I'm doing my maximum right now in a lot of ways. So I already have a lot of things that were destroyed when I came out and said I have a lot to lose. So I lost a lot. But we will see.
You also have a lot of advantages. You're very well known already. Obviously, you come from a famous family. You're a media figure. You're a woman, which may in some ways be an advantage and a disadvantage in Russian politics. Do you feel like Russian politics is ready for someone with your background, with your culture, that's so different from even female figures who have risen to high levels in Russian politics?
Yes, I know that, in Russian mythology, people believe in miracle very much. So for them, that's a kind of a miracle that a blonde girl can do so many things that, they're so different from what they expected from her. So this gives me a big hope for many people going and putting a tick when they see my name, because this is a message of hope and of a miracle that can come up.
For the majority of the population that, say, lives outside of major cities, that is older, I used to say older than 30, let's say older than that.
I'm older than
exactly,
30, I'm 36.
Me too. So, for the older population, the pension age population, this is a big percentage of voters. How do you connect with these people? What is your message?
Well, I'm trying to explain that the correlation between their poverty, between their small pension they get, there's a correlation between international politics, sanctions, Crimea and all those things, and the money they go with to supermarket. So when you try to explain this, of course it's complicated and it's not always works, but when they understand the connection, they become the people who are gonna vote for me.
So one of Mr. Putin's traditions now for a decade and a half has been to connect with people directly through, almost what you would describe as like прямое обращение к царю, да? Direct appeal to the Tsar by video conference, these kinds of strange exercises, many, many hours, wading into the personal lives of people. Can you imagine a different system for connecting with people directly in Russia in the future?
Yes, of course. First of all, it's debates. real politicians should take part in the debates, because this is the only format where it's not only, one question you answer and then another question, but where you can speak and you can react to the answers you hear. And this is what we are lacking at all. You can't ask Putin 2 questions in a row, which would make, his position more clearer on these or that subjects, and you could discuss with him. So debates is the best mechanism ever invented by human race to promote views. So this is a good form. And I insist that Putin should take part in the debates these elections too, which he doesn't. He never debates with even other candidates, and it's ridiculous to my mind.
Even if there were a debate, though, you're still talking about people at the national level trying to communicate to people living somewhere in the regions of Russia whose most important issue is the pothole on their street or the street light or the gas which is not working. How do you increase that connection between ordinary life and what's happening at the high level of politics in Moscow?
Television is this connection, and during this campaign I will have a huge coverage on TV, which is constitutional. They cannot ignore me anymore. And this is actually why I go, because television is their only connection with Moscow, with big cities, with any information. And they never see anything but Putin in this TV. So I want those people to see me, my point of view, and I want to tell about those values I share, democratic, liberal values, which they have never heard of since 90s in Russia. So this is very important for me, this allowance to be on TV, which is constitutional.
In order to implement anything that you would decide at the level of the president, of course, you need staff, you need a government. Do you feel like the current government can implement something other than Mr. Putin's will, or does the entire government basically need to go with Mr. Putin?
No, it's always very hierarchical in Russia, so it's only Putin who decides. And this is not a good system, to my mind. That's why I stand for parliamentary republic, to diminish those powers and to make a system where lots of people take those decisions, which would balance the result. Now all the decisions in Russia are taken by one man or by other people who translate the will of Putin so that it is this or that way good for them.
So you have talked about evolutionary change, not revolutionary change, and you've talked about the importance of many influential people serving at high levels in government. If Mr. Putin asked you to serve as part of his cabinet of ministers, would you do it?
Yes, I think that it's important to use any opportunity to influence the system. So if it will be my field of professional interest, and if I could do something good for liberal opposition, I would accept any kind of proposition that would help promote liberal values and promote liberalization in my country.
Ksenia, last question. If you had a message for our president, Donald Trump, what would it be?
Well, I think it will be, Donald, stop fighting your egos with Putin. Let's do something to go away from Cold War times and do steps forward to create another atmosphere in which we can make some discussion.
Ksenia Anatolievna, искренне благодарим.